Navigating Corporate Governance, Historical Insights, and Future Paths. Dr. Jason Kavich, Wayne Huizenga College of Business and Entrepreneurship, Nova Southeastern University. This research paper discusses corporate governance, its history, the intersection of it between practitioners and scholars, and its future opportunities for better organizational performance and positive linkages to corporate governance research. Corporate governance research has been challenged to find positive relationships with organizational performance, and the private sector has often ignored its research in managing their corporate governance ecosystem. This paper provides historical context, identifies corporate governance challenges, and introduces possible solutions using other research methods and concepts to advance the field. Corporate governance as a topic has grown in practitioner importance and academic research as corporations, countries, and academics have vested interests in how corporations perform and are governed. This interest has grown because of historical events that have often resulted in bankruptcy, fraud, financial exploitation, and investor concern about how their money is being managed within companies. Corporate governance is the system of rules and practices that guide a company's operations. It defines how decisions are made, who makes them, and how to protect the interests of stakeholders. Investors' concern is central to the development of the legal systems and formal guidelines that have arisen over time. Approximately 60% of the world follows a civil law system, while about 40% follow a common law system or mixed version of common and civil law. This matters significantly in corporate governance, as common law tends to provide greater protection for minority shareholders compared to civil law. These legal systems have a significant impact on the number of public corporations in each country and people's willingness to invest. Given the aforementioned failures, it is commonly assumed that corporate governance is to blame, meaning the system of checks and balances did not keep actors of the corporate governance ecosystem in check. However, corporate failures occur around the world in different contexts with different systems, so there must be something more generalizable than the differentiated corporate governance systems that exist. The most likely reason is self-interested actors with executives leading that pack. This is why agency theory is the primary theory utilized in corporate governance research. Behavioral psychology and other social sciences have demonstrated time and again that individuals are self-interested but can demonstrate tremendous variance within that interest. If individuals can benefit themselves with a low risk of being detected, some certainly will. Others that demonstrate moral salience are less likely to do so, as they think certain actions are inherently wrong, even if they are undetected and left unpunished. Executives usually have the most power and secrecy to exploit opportunities to enrich themselves with shareholders and stakeholders, not the wiser. Plenty of research has demonstrated this behavior for decades, which is why the CEO selection is so important. Institutional investors are very willing to pay a premium for companies that appear to have quality corporate governance. However, most corporate governance ratings use a check-the-box process rather than digging deeper into how the process occurs due to the lack of access or transparency to this data. This is one more layer of secrecy that can keep transparency at bay, enabling executives to run their companies the way they want to while limiting oversight. Overall, corporate governance is important, yet difficult to measure and implement in ways that ensures no improprieties occur. The following sections detail the rise of corporate governance, its current state, and the challenges to measure it well and implement foolproof solutions. 3 shareholder and stakeholder landscapes. The Penn Central bankruptcy brought corporate governance to the forefront in the 1970s. In the 1980s in the U.S., there were leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers. The 1990s brought greater focus on internal mechanisms, board involvement, focus on shareholder value, and the start of shareholder activism. In the 2000s, the U.S. had very large corporate scandals and bankruptcies that prompted the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and CEO certification of their financial statements. In the 2010s, the credit crisis brought about the Dodd-Frank Act to mitigate future crises. In the meantime, The Cadbury Report was issued in 1992, providing the first framework for corporate governance best practices that have been widely used as a template for many organizations. As history demonstrates, corporate governance has evolved and developed over time, often due to shocks to the financial system that resulted in new laws, requirements, guidelines, etc. However, corporate governance decisions are not just about business. Corporate governance impacts the competitiveness of countries, political issues, cultural issues, down to the purpose of the corporation. For example, the US and UK have placed significantly greater value on shareholders to the neglect of many other stakeholders over time, whereas many other countries take more of a stakeholder-centered view. The heart of this issue is the efficiency of capital. While the US and UK believe that returns to shareholders and profit maximization provide for the greatest economic growth, innovation, and country wealth, these two countries also have some of the largest wealth inequality gaps in the world. Countries that take more of a stakeholder approach tend to have less wealth inequality and often prioritize employment and more social safety nets for their citizens, which may stifle innovation and capital efficiency. There is research evidence supporting both sides of this example, but no unequivocal proof of which system is better. This example demonstrates particularly important systematic and national differences that all people should be aware of, as it can impact where and how they want to live. Academic research has provided significant insights into corporate governance both through theories and empirical work. However, no singular theory fully explains corporate governance, and much of the empirical work has found little or negative relationship between corporate governance actors and organizational performance. Yet, the prevailing view is that organizations are significantly better with corporate governance than without it. The appendix provides definitions of the most influential theories in corporate governance. Research. The dominant theory in corporate governance has been agency theory due to the separation of ownership and control. Secondly, stakeholder theory has been gaining traction as scholars are attempting to assess its impact on long-term organizational performance and sustainability. Many countries already subscribe to this theory and model it within their legal and economic systems. Beyond these two theories, transaction cost economics, stewardship, class hegemony, managerial hegemony, path dependence, resource dependence, institutional, political, and network governance theory all have made unique contributions to the corporate governance literature. Furthermore, the business disciplines, economics, management, finance, accounting, law, have not done the best job of cross-pollinating their work to mitigate the lack of correlations we see in the research. Lastly, even though the world is adopting more corporate governance standards like the Cadbury Report, most corporate governance research has been U.S.-centric due to the availability of data, number of public corporations, and being the wealthiest country in the world. It is well known that family firms, the state, and banks are often the largest investors in other parts of the world. Thus, comparisons are not always apples to apples, and much of the existing research has a U.S. focus on it. There is growth in global corporate governance research, and databases like NRG Metrics now exist that cover corporate governance data on over 100 countries and their public companies. There are plenty of opportunities for additional corporate governance research, and it is needed as there is lack of correlations in much of the research, thus needing more cross-discipline, innovative methods, access to data, and statistical techniques to further explain the subject. Over the last 30 years, activist investors have become much more influential in using their ownership positions, shareholder rights, and knowledge of corporate governance mechanisms to influence and/or force companies to do what they want. Index funds have played a key role in the last 10 years as well, with the largest ones, e.g. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, becoming more engaging with their portfolio companies. However, they still vote with management 99% of the time, so their larger influence can be questioned. But companies must conduct shareholder segmentations to understand and engage with shareholders that can have a considerable influence if they desire. The heterogeneity of shareholders is of the utmost importance to companies, as each investor has its own motives, desires, and strategies for how they think a company should be run. Companies must engage with their shareholders and build support for their current strategy so they are not targeted by activist investors and/or have a majority support that will withstand outside attacks. Stakeholder segmentation is important, as well as companies focus on long-term strategies and sustainability of their organizations. Understanding and engaging with the most important actors in a company's corporate governance ecosystem allows management to be informed of their positions on the company, consider other strategies, and try to reach some consensus on how a company can move forward with mutual agreement. While no one expects 100% agreement amongst all stakeholders, seeking out their opinions and strategies offers differing lenses and hopefully support as companies chart their future strategies. In 2025 in the U.S., the corporate landscape has been changing from the previous 5 years concerning environmental, social, and governance (ESG) issues, along with diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) issues. The Trump administration is minimizing or attempting to eradicate organizations' emphasis and attention to environmental, social, and DEI issues and policies. In addition, an America First policy is hastening a shift to supply chains coming from the western part of the world, greater national independence, and reconfiguration of allies around the world. These issues are very germane to corporate governance as companies try to navigate uncertainty and chart future directions for their organizations. Business and human beings dislike uncertainty. The axiom stating, "Just tell us the rules of the game, and we'll do the rest," has never rung truer as uncertainty and volatility rise. Corporate governance is a topic of significant interest in both the world of practitioners and scholars for both mutual and distinct reasons. Practitioners are interested in governance that guides organizations to long-term sustainability and increased organizational performance. Scholars are interested in the aforementioned items as well, but they are also interested in the scientific theories and mechanisms that help organizations perform at their optimal level so that information can be shared with others to lead to healthier networks of organizations or ecosystems. An ecosystem is a complex network or interconnected system. Corporate governance is the system of rules and practices that guide a company's operations. It defines how decisions are made, who makes them, and how to protect the interests of stakeholders. The actors in a corporate governance ecosystem include the internal governance actors, boards of directors, board chairperson, board committees, CEOs, top managers, and employees. The external governance actors include activist investors, institutional investors, proxy intermediaries, regulators, customers, and other stakeholders. While most business people are familiar with these actors, they may lack a deeper, more nuanced understanding of their roles in a corporate governance ecosystem. This is of the utmost importance, as the ability of each actor to impact a business is often unique, with different intentions, risks, and ramifications if the actor is misunderstood, underestimated, or not accounted for. This comes from the historical development of corporate governance, where initial board members felt their jobs were a joke, even though they were supposed to be overseeing how an organization was managing investors' money. Fast forward, the development of corporate governance includes shareholder activists, exceptionally large shareholders, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, public companies not providing guidance, virtual-only shareholder meetings, skyrocketing executive compensation, and 4 decades of eliminating middle management. These are just some of the recent developments in the corporate governance ecosystem. However, the actors have not changed. Their understanding of their rights, responsibilities, and mechanisms that evolve over time can help them exercise influence on and inside organizations, as the struggle for power and to make or influence organizational decisions is the significant issue. Academic research on corporate governance has had a challenging time pinpointing the variables that significantly drive organizational performance. For example, board structural characteristics show primarily no to mixed evidence in improving governance quality or organizational performance. Most auditor restrictions have no impact on statement quality, Commercial and academic governance and ESG rating systems largely lack predictive power. Lastly, regulatory requirements for many mandated governance practices have neutral or negative impacts on corporate outcomes and shareholder value. While these findings appear negative at face value, they also provide clues for future research directions. For example, many best practices or blue ribbon commissions have not tested their ideas, or they may not know the current corporate governance academic research. Examples of this include the passage of Sarbanes-Oxley and the Dodd-Frank Act. There was considerable disconfirming evidence that was not considered in them for passage. Myron Steele, former Chief Justice of the Delaware Supreme Court, wrote, "Until I personally see empirical data that supports in a particular business sector or for a particular corporation that separating the chairman and CEO, majority voting, elimination of staggered boards, proxy access with limits, holding periods, and percentage of shares, until something demonstrates that one or more of those will effectively alter the quality of corporate governance in a given situation, then it is difficult to say that all, much less each, of these proposed changes are truly reform. Reform implies to me something better than you have now. Prove it, establish it, and then it may well be accepted by all of us." Governance changes are costly in attempts to improve governance and failed changes. Relatedly, strategic decisions fail 50% of the time and mergers and acquisitions fail 80% of the time. The point is that these decisions and changes should be highly evidence-based to increase the probability of success, value creation for shareholders and stakeholders, and efficient use of capital. Corporate governance is supposed to provide the public, shareholders, investors, and stakeholders with confidence that organizations are being overseen and advised on best ways to move a company forward. Thus, it should help strengthen investor confidence, trust in the financial markets, and consumer confidence that organizations have accountability, transparency, and fairness in their business practices. There is little question that corporate governance matters, but we do not know precisely when and how it matters. Another issue within corporate governance is that organizations are evaluated using a check-the-box method rather than the processes on how those boxes are checked. For example, what are the processes of executive compensation, risk management, and CEO succession? Not just checking a box by saying they have a plan or they have a committee to assist with these functions. The quality with which these processes are executed determines the likelihood of success. This information can be difficult to come by, as organizations would have to be willing to share these processes. However, investors and the public would highly value these disclosures in being able to evaluate an organization. When academic research cannot find many conclusive correlations, as is the case in corporate governance, that means important variables are missing or underestimated in some way, shape, or form. Corporate governance is an organizational issue and requires multiple perspectives in its analysis and study, such as economic, legal, strategic, and behavioral perspectives. 4 variables that are not often included or in the periphery in corporate governance research are organizational design, organizational culture, the personality of the CEO, and the quality of the board. These matter as they home in on the uniqueness of each organization. Academic research and organizations like the NACD recommend organizations create their own internal corporate governance structure to be effective, which requires rigorous organizational analysis. However, academic research needs to use complementary tools and techniques to study corporate governance as well, which most often does not happen. There are approximately 359 million companies worldwide, which does not include all types of organizations. Thus, the applicable opportunity for corporate governance to be applied is vast and important to the competitiveness of countries. It has been argued that board independence and accountability may be the most important variables of all. This is due to independent board members overseeing and challenging management when needed. Scandals often happen in the dark and in secret. Independent board members having the courage to take a stand when possible, mismanagement or scandal may be occurring, is crucial to shareholders and stakeholders. Accountability matters and does not bother executives, board members, shareholders, or stakeholders if the long-term sustainability of an organization is top of mind. Of course, disagreements on how that can be achieved are expected, but often a certain strategy will bubble to the top and be able to garner the majority of support despite challenges that may come to the plan and direction of the organization. Other important variables include board composition and diversity on the board of directors. Research suggests that board members who put the time into learning the business and have prominent levels of engagement are the most effective board members. An example of this is the statistically significant impact that professors have in the boardroom compared to many other types of directors. However, most board members come from friends or acquaintances that current board members know. In addition, the motives and ethics of board members are of the utmost importance, as research suggests board members have many different motives and sets of ethics. In addition, women on boards comprise approximately 23% of boards globally. Biologically, anthropologically, historically, and culturally, women offer different lenses that are needed in the boardroom. While research has had trouble demonstrating women on the board make a statistically significant difference in overall organizational performance, it has also had a hard time pinpointing precisely how corporate governance improves organizations, yet we believe it does. Lastly, executive and board compensation matter, as executive comp can cause executives to pursue or pass on organizational risks, and the pay-for-performance link has often been ignored by boards, while the general public is keenly aware of this problem, as CEO pay has far outpaced the average worker's compensation. Another prominent issue in the corporate governance ecosystem is company ownership. Who owns it? What percentages of ownership? How many votes? And what type of stock does the owner have? Underpinning these issues are how executives, board members, shareholders, and stakeholders exercise their power and influence to run or direct an organization. Each of these actors is becoming more adept at using their legal and ownership rights to influence their company. The main question is, what is their motive? Executives had operated for decades without getting much outside pressure from actors. That has changed, and predominantly for the better. From the strategy and organizational behavior literature, research suggests that greater performance and outcomes come from many parties working through different perspectives and lenses, which is hard work, but usually provides greater results, meaning better organizational performance. Practitioners often have numerous reasons for not adopting or partially adopting corporate governance research into running their organizations. As mentioned previously, the research is very mixed in describing this phenomenon and has many findings with negative or no significance to help organizational performance. Resistance to change is another common reason, as executives often trust their own experiences, saw it done a certain way, or are focusing on short-term gains versus long-term sustainability. Sometimes there is a lack of knowledge about the corporate governance ecosystem and principles that can help their organizations. The following are challenges and opportunities that arise out of the aforementioned issues. Despite all the corporate collapses and financial scandals historically, they continue globally, even with the improvements in corporate governance. They continue because human beings act without integrity somewhere in the corporate governance ecosystem, usually in an effort to enrich themselves and through some form of secrecy. Corporate governance is much more likely to be only partially successful in its efforts to help run ethical, transparent, and efficient companies. Even though this is likely the case, it is still beneficial compared to no corporate governance, as the outcomes are higher investor confidence, healthier corporations, more active investors, and stakeholders will be given more consideration than not. Corporate governance has also become much more international, even though each company needs to decide its own structure. Organizations like the OECD, NACD, Global Corporate Governance Forum, and International Corporate Governance Network produce principles, blue ribbon reports, and guidelines help to increase the discussion and implementation of corporate governance principles. While academic research has found it challenging to provide scientific support for a number of these documents, they are well considered helpful in the larger landscape compared to no governance at all. Even given the heterogeneity of companies being public, private, family-owned, single individuals, government entities, nonprofits, or newer types of investors like sovereign wealth funds and private equity, organizations can benefit from a good corporate governance structure focused on sustainability of the organization, with internal controls, management structures, performance measures, succession plans, and consideration of shareholder and stakeholder interests. Institutional ownership has grown in many places, and they are starting to act more like owners by engaging with management and voting more. Institutional investors require good governance as well as they manage billions and trillions of dollars that are comprised of the contributions from working individuals around the world. Corporate culture and the ethics associated with it are at the center of quality governance. Organizations and their leaders who are transparent, offer disclosures, and have historically reliable financials are places where corporate governance can be most successful. Netflix is an example of this, with their radical transparency, where board members are allowed to attend any meetings and see any documents they want. Organizations that are the same page from the top down, engage their shareholders and stakeholders, and have high quality and ethics significantly increase their probability of being a successful organization and maximizing their effectiveness. The evidence is increasingly pointing to the positive link between good corporate governance and corporate performance, but more work needs to be done. It is vital to keep a system of corporate governance under review. It is as important to a nation as any other crucial part of its institutional framework, because it depends on a good portion of the nation's prosperity. It contributes to its social cohesion in a way too little recognized. A proper framework for the exercise of power is an economic necessity, a political requirement, and a moral imperative. When this does not occur, executives and/or board members have often acted in selfish, greedy, power-hungry ways that result in significant losses for shareholders and stakeholders, while possibly destroying their own company. Independent directors have often stood by passively as well that enabled the prior behavior and may have enriched themselves as well. Look at the board of Tesla as an example. Why would they not approve Elon Musk's asks as their remuneration is significantly higher than the average board member? Thus, ethical behavior and conduct by boards and executives reinforced by organizational culture is the solution to the ills that have plagued many other organizations. Without these things, scandals, value destruction, and lack of competitiveness will continue to persist. After all is said and done, it is so interesting and compelling that ethics and values underpin organizational success despite all the discussions around strategy, risk, investment, etc. Perhaps these soft characteristics should be given much greater attention for development by organizations as we move into the future. 6. Limitations and managerial implications. This research paper was written to highlight the major theoretical and empirical findings in corporate governance literature, but it is not a comprehensive review. In addition, this is not an empirical paper, despite the themes being driven by the preponderance of evidence in the literature. This paper is intended to inform practitioners of the major scientific findings, along with articulating the current challenges within the corporate governance literature. In addition, it helps scholars and researchers get a broader view of the challenges within the literature and the need for more variables, cross-discipline research, and methods required to better understand how corporate governance impacts organizational performance. The proposed solutions put forward in terms of variables, ethics, and integrity need to be studied and tested at a deeper level than currently exists. For managers, the corporate governance literature suggests that they should be very aware of all the actors in the corporate governance ecosystem and what their capabilities, motivations, and conflicts of interest are. They should understand that while positive correlations in a single theory of corporate governance may be hard to come by, The prevailing feeling and evidence suggests organizations are much better with corporate governance than without it. Institutional investors are willing to pay a premium for organizations that appear to have quality corporate governance. Lastly, the importance of ethics, transparency, and accountability cannot be overstated. Having these characteristics in the executive leaders and board members significantly increases the likelihood of quality governance. Cette conclusion. Undoubtedly, corporate governance is a topic of significant interest to both practitioners and academics due to the impact it has on organizations, communities, and the competitiveness of countries. This paper discusses the history of corporate governance and challenges and opportunities for both practitioners and scholars in unlocking the full potential of this mechanism and phenomenon. Current research has had a difficult time fully explaining corporate governance due to lack of important data, discipline silos, and need for broader research methods to be used. Thus, practitioners have not implemented as much corporate governance research due to its lack of conclusiveness and sometimes complexity. This paper highlights the major themes, challenges, and opportunities for scholars and practitioners to better understand the corporate governance context and ecosystem to make better decisions going forward. Appendix Table 1. Summary of theories affecting corporate governance. Theory name summary. 1. Agency. Agency theory identifies the agency relationship where one party, the principal, delegates work to another party, the agent. In the context of a corporation, the owners are the principal and the directors are the agent. 2. Transaction cost. Transaction cost economics views the firm itself as a governance structure. The economics choice of an appropriate governance structure can help align the interests of directors and shareholders. 3. Stakeholder. Stakeholder theory takes account of a wider group of constituents rather than focusing on shareholders. Where there is an emphasis on stakeholders, the governance structure of the company may provide for some direct representation of the stakeholder groups. 4. Stewardship directors are regarded as the stewards of the company's assets and will be predisposed to act in the best interests of the shareholders. 5. Class hegemony. Directors view themselves as an elite at the top of the company and will promote to new director appointments, taking into account how well new appointments might fit into that elite. 6. Managerial hegemony. Management of a company, with its knowledge of day-to-day operations, may effectively dominate the directors and hence weaken the influence of the directors. 8. Resource dependence. Directors are able to connect the company to the resources needed to achieve corporate objectives. 9. Institutional. The institutional environment influences societal beliefs and practices that impact on various actors within society. 10. Political. Political theory has a significant influence on different ownership and governance structures. 11. Network governance. A structure of network governance allows for superior risk management. Author profile. Dr. Jason Kavich is an associate professor of management at the H. Wayne Huizenga College of Business and Entrepreneurship at Nova Southeastern University. He received his Ph.D. in strategic management from the University of Texas at San Antonio, is an advisory board member and a certified independent director through the National Association of Corporate Directors. His research interests are in corporate governance, shareholder activism, and strategic management. Welcome to our exploration of corporate governance, a critical framework that shapes how companies are directed and controlled. Corporate governance has become increasingly vital in today's business world, serving as the foundation for organizational success and sustainability. It encompasses the systems, principles, and processes that guide corporate behavior and ensure accountability. The importance of corporate governance has grown significantly over recent decades, largely driven by major corporate failures and financial scandals that highlighted the need for stronger oversight. Today, we'll examine the historical development, key challenges, and emerging opportunities in corporate governance, understanding how these elements continue to evolve and shape modern business practices. The evolution of corporate governance has been marked by significant events and transformations. Starting with the Penn Central bankruptcy in the 1970s, we witnessed how corporate failures could impact the entire financial system. The 1980s brought a wave of leveraged buyouts, forcing companies to reassess their internal control mechanisms. The 1990s saw increased focus on internal governance structures, but it was the corporate scandals of the early 2000s, like Enron and WorldCom, that led to landmark legislation such as the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The 2008 financial crisis further reshaped governance through the Dodd-Frank Act, demonstrating how each crisis has contributed to stronger regulatory frameworks and better governance practices. Corporate governance is understood through various theoretical lenses, each offering unique insights into organizational behavior and control. The dominant framework is agency theory, which addresses the fundamental relationship between shareholders and managers, highlighting potential conflicts of interest. Stakeholder theory has gained prominence by emphasizing the importance of considering all parties affected by corporate decisions. Other significant perspectives include stewardship theory, which focuses on managers as responsible stewards, and resource dependence theory, examining how external resources influence governance. These theoretical frameworks don't exist in isolation, but work together to provide a comprehensive understanding of corporate governance mechanisms. Different countries have developed distinct approaches to corporate governance, primarily divided between shareholder and stakeholder models. The United States and United Kingdom traditionally focus on maximizing shareholder value, prioritizing stock price and investor returns. In contrast, many European and Asian countries adopt a broader stakeholder approach, considering employees, customers, suppliers, and society at large. Each system has its merits. The shareholder model promotes efficiency and clear accountability, while the stakeholder model potentially leads to more sustainable and socially responsible business practices. These differences reflect varying cultural values and economic priorities across nations. Research in corporate governance faces several significant challenges. One major difficulty lies in establishing clear correlations between governance practices and company performance. Current research methodologies often struggle to capture the complex, interconnected nature of governance systems. The prevalent checkbox approach to governance compliance often fails to address the qualitative aspects of effective oversight. Additionally, measuring governance quality remains problematic due to the multifaceted nature of corporate control systems. These challenges are compounded by the substantial costs associated with implementing governance changes, making it crucial to develop more robust, evidence-based approaches. Board composition and diversity represent crucial aspects of effective corporate governance. The selection of board members, particularly independent directors, plays a vital role in ensuring proper oversight and strategic guidance. Global statistics show that women hold only 23% of board positions worldwide, highlighting the ongoing challenge of achieving gender diversity. The backgrounds of board members, including academic expertise and industry experience, significantly impact board effectiveness. Ethical considerations and personal integrity of board members are paramount as they set the tone for organizational culture and behavior. Looking ahead, there are numerous opportunities to enhance corporate governance practices. Organizations can improve through greater transparency, stronger ethical frameworks, and better integration of governance principles into organizational culture. Companies like Netflix have demonstrated how radical transparency can transform corporate governance. The future of governance lies in developing more dynamic, adaptable systems that can respond to changing business environments while maintaining strong ethical foundations. This includes embracing new technologies, improving stakeholder communication, and fostering more inclusive decision-making processes. In conclusion, effective corporate governance remains fundamental to organizational success and societal well-being. While measuring its direct impact presents challenges, the importance of ethical behavior and strong organizational culture cannot be overstated. The future of corporate governance lies in finding the right balance between different stakeholder interests while maintaining high ethical standards. As we move forward, organizations must continue to evolve their governance practices, embracing transparency, diversity, and ethical leadership to build sustainable, responsible businesses that benefit all stakeholders.